Mother's Day was last Sunday, so here's wishing all mommies and mommy figures a very happy Mother's Day. Long before American Anna Jarvis began Mother's Day on May 12, 1907, and US President Woodrow Wilson made it a national holiday for Americans, the Phrygians had a festival for Cybele, the mother of gods. The Greeks celebrated Rhea, the mother of all gods, and India has the mother goddess Durga. Moms, truly the universal superheroes. Welcome to Kaleidoscope with me, Savithri Rodrigo, where we are positive, daring, different. Today on the show, the way of the jackal, the math of car assembly, the power of the female journalist, market news, and more. Did you know that Kaleidoscope is on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn? So if you like us, do subscribe and follow us. We'd also like to say a huge thank you to our partners, CDB, The Daily Morning, and Srilanka Life. Thank you for being amazing.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EV vehicles.
Looking back at the week that was on CDB Snapshot, Sri Lanka's tourism earnings surged 92% compared to 2023, earning over $1.25 billion for the first 4 months of 2024. Sri Lanka's worker remittances crossed the $2 billion mark in the first 4 months as well. Sri Lanka is aiming to triple investment to $3 billion this year. The world's best baguette baker, Paris-based Lankan-born Tarshan Selvaraja, is the first Sri Lankan to carry the Olympic torch in the cross-country relay. The crew of Maiden is the first all-female team to win a global yacht race of 27,000 miles. Dubai gets ready to begin the world's largest coastal regeneration project, planting 100 million mangroves. And in astronomical news, Danish chef Rasmus Munk is taking fine dining to the skies aboard spaceship Neptune.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. We are driving straight into car assembly plants today because Sri Lanka has given the green light for 4 new plants to begin operations within the next 3 months, and 11 more are registered. Turns out that the government has a plan to grow exports in this sector from 200 million to $1 billion. But is this growing the local industry or is it draining the treasury? Well, I had a chat with the founder of Innosolve Lanka, Sharan Fernando, to find out more. So there's a lot of news about the assembly of cars in Sri Lanka. Is this a good thing?
If Sri Lanka can't afford to import cars, how is it that we can afford to import parts to assemble a car? Typically, the most efficient way of producing a car is by manufacturing it, that is in the factory, using the robotics and all the economies of scale and efficiency of manufacturing this car in its factory. Typically, assembly means you take components from that factory in the form of components and you put it together. The CIF price of an assembly car, that is the sum of the parts to be assembled, is about 30% more than the CIF price of buying a car, CBU it's called in the industry, completely built up. So a car built in the factory costs 30% less than components to assemble a car. If you look at the components that we're adding to this car locally, yes, we're adding tires, fine, that's local value addition. Assemblers would say, oh, we do the seats. But if you look at the seats, every component in that seat is imported. So finally, we're spending 30% more dollars and all we're doing locally is adding some labor. So I really don't think it is efficient to assemble cars locally if they're internal combustion engine cars. If they're electric cars, it's a different story. Because an internal combustion engine car has 50,000 moving parts. An electric car has three generic components: a motor, a battery, and the controller, which is the communication between the motor and the battery. So the controller is a bunch of software. Now the controller is something that we can do locally. The motor and the battery are generic, so we can import them. There's a lot more scope for value addition in an electric car, and I would be as harsh as to say there's almost no scope for value addition in an internal combustion engine car. It's very, very little, and I don't think it justifies the 30% cost premium.
And now, here's a quick look at our markets. At the Colombo Stock Exchange, the all-share price index continued to climb, still close to one-year highs with a promising 2 billion rupee average daily turnover level. Oil prices held steady at $83 per barrel, even as large wildfires were threatening Canada's oil sands, and as the market expected US crude oil and gasoline inventories to show a drawdown. Gold prices remained at near all-time highs of $2,350 per ounce, with demand from China continuing to bolster prices. Sleeping Beauty's reawakening fashion was this year's theme at the amazing Met Gala. While the beauties on the carpet were hardly asleep, the crazily spectacular outfits definitely reawakened fashion. We know it as the Narya, but it is special. Sri Lanka is the only country in the world that is home to a subspecies of the Eurasian golden jackal. It is the island's sole wild dog and is the third largest carnivore. But there is very little we know about this magnificent creature. We just know him as the cunning, sly, bad guy in folktales. The Way of the Jackal is a new book published by the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society, co-authored by Utpala Jayavira, Chandika Jayaratna and Professor Sampath Senviratna. And he is with me today to change what we know about the jackal and that much overlooked Narya. Firstly, what was the most exciting find you had when you were doing this book?
We have information now to believe that maybe they are actually genetically wolves as well, but they are the primitive wolves. So they show everything a wolf would show. They are pack hunters, they are highly social, and the babies of the previous litter help the parents to look after their subsequent siblings. So it's a very tight family unit. Pup would die to save another pup, like of her, basically a younger sister or a brother. Similarly, a father would die to save the family. So these are like very much human-like traits. So that's the most exciting and most amazing thing that we saw in the field.
So what was it like putting this project together with your co-authors?
Chandika came to me. He wanted to do a study on rusty spotted cat because it's the smallest cat in the world. So I said, well, I'm not that interested in rusty spotted cat, but if you like to work on jackals, we can work. He said, why jackal? I said, why not? Nobody ever studied Sri Lankan jackal. No study done. And jackal is the only wild dog in Sri Lanka. And then came Utpala Jayavira later, about 3 years ago, to do a project on bats. She wanted to work on mammals because my lab is mostly a bird lab. I said, look, if you wanted to study jackals, I think I have a project. So that's how this came about.
The Way of the Jackal is the untold story of Sri Lanka's wild dog. Why has it taken so long to tell this story?
For us, it took a long time because it took 1 full year for Utpala to do her work. Because we've done systematic island surveys of population density. We interviewed lots of people, farmers to forest officers to vets and all kinds of all strata of people. Because one good thing is that everybody knows jackal. There's no confusion. Then to find specimens, to do autopsies, we need to find fresh ones. So it took a while, and then it took even more time to put this into so what we wanted to have a book. It's a monograph, but it has science, but at the same time we wanted to have it not kind of filled with jargon. So we tried to dilute, distilled it to a thing like it's a simple read. So it took a while, and also to add some art, some literature, some poetry, some old stories into it. So it took a while.
What makes the jackal so iconic?
What is the most iconic or amazing animal in the planet? So the list, the top of the list is the tiger. So as a human, the tiger ranked the top, and then the panda, and then the lion, and then the elephant, leopard, and list goes on. Of the top 10, all mammals, mostly carnivores except the elephant and panda is also a carnivore, and then grey wolf is there as well. One bird, penguin. Penguin is the only bird, no reptiles, no frogs, no bees, nothing, because people find they are attractive and charismatic. Grey wolf has its closest relatives, which are the jackals. So we have a very close relative of one of the most iconic animals in the planet, isolated in our island. Our jackal was considered as an endemic species once upon a time. Now it is considered an endemic subspecies, and as I said earlier, it is the only island subspecies of the jackal in the world, and it is the only dog in the forest.
Sampath, the Narya is always the bad man in Sri Lankan folk tales and in lots of fairy tales, for instance.
I think,
Why is that?
Jackal, the grey wolf considered intelligent and wise in its native territories, but jackal, partly it has a jackal. It's a kind of an Asian name where it doesn't have that wow factor. That's one. B, for some reason, most of the bad PR that the fox got in Europe, for some reason transferred into jackal, because we don't have foxes. So all that bad PR, the cunning, the artful, the brainy but messy, this slimy, not loyal, all these negative attributes were kind of attributed to this one animal, but it's basically your dog at home.
So what role can the jackal play in Sri Lanka's wildlife tourism?
Jackal can play few key aspects. I would say 3 very important aspects to our society. One is its untapped huge potential for our wildlife tourism. In Sri Lanka, we have only one species of dog, and it's the 3rd largest carnivore. And as I said, carnivores are considered very iconic and charismatic in the global tourism business, and Sri Lanka is one of the top global tourism wildlife tourism destinations, and nobody talks about it. It's amazing how we miss such a big trump.
The pen is mightier than the sword, but this mural here is a little more than just that. On the side of the Rio complex at Slave Island is a massive mural that celebrates the pioneering women journalists across the different platforms of TV, radio and print. The significance of the 3 women journalists is symbolic, as freedom of expression and levels of surveillance and monitoring is taking on new dimensions. A labour of love by Minal Vikramatunga, an ambassador for the Fearless Collective, this is an ode to her uncle, Lasantha Vikramatunga, who through his journalistic legacy paved the way for other journalists to be unbowed and unafraid. And in fact, some of them did work on this mural as well.
We're a group of feminist artists who paint murals across South Asia of underrepresented or misrepresented communities. This is my mural. I am the lead artist. I decided to spotlight amazing female journalists talking about responsible journalism and storytelling in Sri Lanka, and really making sure that we honor their lives.
So if you're passing the Rio, take a look at the side of the complex and salute these brave women who are all about resilience and power. So here's to the power of change makers and mothers. We will see you next week.